Welcome to the Year of the Movie podcast, the podcast where we talk about movies from the year of the movie 2023. We're your hosts. I'm Sebastian, and with me, as always, is Guy Fieri.
You're allowed one.
Yeah. It's also not that bad.
No, I got a haircut.
Yeah.
If you're just listening to this, there's a little bit of blonde left over. That's the context. It's actually funnier if you explain the joke.
Yeah.
So
This is Guy talking.
today we're talking about Flavortown.
We started this podcast because 2023 was a weird, goofy, interesting year for movies.
Mm-hmm.
80 for Brady, 65, Strays, Oppenheimer, Barbie, The Holdovers, there were strikes, it was a whole ordeal.
Mm-hmm.
If you like this podcast and us talking about it, consider supporting us on Patreon, reviewing, rating, wherever you listen to your podcasts, following us on Instagram, subscribing on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
Virtual Cocktail Recordings.
At Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives.
At Triple D. What movie are we talking about today?
We're talking about the Pod Generation.
Everyone is talking about the Pod Generation.
Yeah. So in case you haven't heard of it, the synopsis is, in a not-so-distant future, tech giant Pegasus offers couples the opportunity to share their pregnancies via detachable artificial wombs or pods. And so begins Rachel and Alvy's wild ride to parenthood in this brave new world.
Wild?
What were your first impressions when you heard about this movie?
Well, it was definitely, we were just looking up trailers for 2023 movies.
Mm-hmm.
Saw the trailer,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, that kind of looks fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
Pretty much the same. This is a Hulu movie. It's not a Hulu original, but it is on Hulu.
Yep.
So, yeah, we've part of our process of finding movies is just scrolling through everything
Yep.
and then seeing what trailers are there. So, yeah, I remember being interested in the trailer. It's sci-fi. It described itself as a comedy. So, we're like, great. Those are things that we are interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Amelia Clark is in it, and she's cool.
So is Chiwetel.
Yes.
I like him.
Yeah. Yeah. The tone of the synopsis kind of describes the rest of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I have thoughts
Okay.
after reading about this movie.
Yeah.
We'll get into it. The trailer is very good at marketing itself. It's a very good trailer. Like, it got us interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
So it has like those plunky orchestral music score things where just like they're picking at the violin and stuff. It's really upbeat editing. There are quotes from various reviews that call it a sci-fi satire of the very near future. There's lots of images of the advancement and incorporation of technology into everyday life. It highlights that Alvy is the odd one out for wanting them to have a natural birth and not use the pods. It shows some comedic moments of the parents getting used to the pod and the different bonding styles between them during the pregnancy. There's like some hints at the conflict that they face of like trying to bond with their pod baby. And yeah, there's lots of positive quotes from various reviews. There's like just one shot where the full screen is covered in different reviews. And again, we'll get more of that later when we get to the production facts. Yeah. Should we talk about the cast?
The cast. Like we said, Amelia Clark is Rachel Novi.
Mm-hmm.
Chiwetel Ejiofor as Alvy Novi. I think that's how you pronounce it, at least the best that I can. I've heard it pronounced multiple different ways.
Yeah.
So I truly couldn't tell you. Vanette Robinson as Alice, Benedict Lansbert Noon as Josh, Rosalie Craig as Womb Center Director, Jean-Marc Barr as Pegasus Founder.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that Rosalie Craig's character didn't have a name.
It's
just Womb Center Director.
Yeah.
Just because like it's a relatively small cast. But she plays a pretty big role for just being like unnamed person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so the plot. Again, stop me whenever you want. So Rachel has a dream where she's pregnant. She wakes up, she realizes she isn't, and then she starts her day, as you do. The voice of an artificial assistant tracks her vitamins, her gut health, it makes her breakfast, and it helps her pick out an outfit for her to wear to work.
It makes her breakfast by 3D printing the breakfast.
Yeah. And yeah, then the outfit thing is like it's cycling through Rachel's closet, and then she's like, the last time that you wore this outfit, and they all have names. It's not just
Yeah.
like shirt. It's like the Earl Grey suit or whatever. It's like you wore this one last Wednesday. I suggest wearing this one today. And yeah, Rachel is very like fully incorporated her routine with this artificial assistant. She wakes up her husband Alvy. Uh, they have very different starts to their day, with Alvy ignoring the artificial assistant. So sorry.
Oh my goodness, are you okay?
Yeah, I think I have hair in my throat. Oh god.
Well, Rachel wakes up her husband Alfie, and they have very different starts to their day, with Alfie ignoring the artificial assistant as much as possible, which makes the AI mad and it burns his toast. It 3D prints burnt toast.
Yeah.
I don't know how that one happens. He tries to grab his coffee, and then the AI takes the coffee back and says, "What's the magic word?" And he just says, "Magic word," and he walks away without getting his coffee.
I don't know if making it mad was the right word to use because the tone of the artificial intelligence is the same throughout, but it has positive and negative reinforcement of like you you have to incorporate this thing into your routine to
Yeah.
make it easier for you, but also if you don't, then there are consequences. Yeah. So Rachel is an executive at a tech company developing AI assistants and now AI executives that are gonna take over everyone's jobs.
Which is
And
the thing that real life is.
yeah, it's we're almost there.
Yeah.
And Alvy is a botanist, which for some reason throws off Rachel's boss. We'll come back to there.
Yeah.
Rachel's boss tells her that they want to offer her a promotion, and as a perk, she gets a spot at the Womb Center. The center calls Rachel, and she schedules a tour. So the Womb Center was created by Pegasus, which is a company that also owns Rachel's company, and they provide the artificial wombs or pods to grow the babies. Pegasus says there are various videos of the founder talking throughout. So Pegasus says that they started this process to combat the drop in birth rates, which they say was caused by the strain of childbirth and pregnancy on working women, and that they didn't want to sacrifice their careers. So then Pegasus was like, here's the solution. We'll make pregnancy convenient for you. There's no other point where there's anything else that combats this as like this is the actual reason why birth rates were dropping or anything. So as far as the movie logic goes, this is why birth rates are dropping.
Yeah.
So Rachel talks to her friend and coworker Alice about the womb center. Alice is excited for her, and Rachel tells her that she hasn't told Alvy that she signed them up for a spot 2 years ago. Alvy prefers a natural birth versus the artificial pods at the center. Rachel says not to worry though, she won't go on the tour without him. That night, they talk about their days, and Alvy talks about his students interacting with nature for the first time. He talks about the importance of staying connected to nature and how separated humans are now from what nature intended. And then Rachel ends up not telling him about the center, and she goes to the tour alone. She learns all about the womb center's process, how everything is state of the art and it's all very scientific. She decides to pay the deposit fee, which Alvy gets an alert for. That night, they start a debate about if this is the right move for them. Over the next few days, they talk to Alice and her husband Josh about their experiences with the pod. Alice goes on a long rant about the history of the relationship with the womb and how this is the perfect solution to empower women. They also consult Rachel's therapist, who is a giant artificial eye, who Alvy struggles to relate to, which, yeah.
Yeah, but the therapist was also interesting because, like, she talks to the therapist and was like, I don't know about this.
Mm-hmm.
And then it doesn't super answer, and more is just like, it's weird that your husband doesn't support AI.
Yeah.
And, like, a therapist shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
And I know it's an AI, but it was really, like,
So
it was off-putting.
they sprinkle, yeah, the AI therapist is very off-putting. They sprinkle in different tiny bits of lore about the world where uh, they say that there are no human therapists anymore, and that this is another job that has been outsourced to AI. And then when Alvy is talking with the therapist, then he's like, if you were a human, then I feel like I would be able to open up to you more. And she's like, but I'm the perfect objective source because I don't have a soul and I can just tell you
Yeah.
what stuff is. And then, but then it's like, it still has biases because it's like, well, you should like AI.
Mm-hmm.
And then it also, the Pegasus branding is on the wall behind them. So it's like pretty clear that this is also part of this company that has just taken over everything.
Yep.
Yeah. So eventually Rachel sees how Alvy is struggling to agree to the pod. She says they don't have to go through with it. And then later that night, Alvy changes his mind and says that they should have a baby. They sign the paperwork at the center with the director asking if Alvy will be the father and that biologically he doesn't need to be involved at all. They also say that they don't want to pick the gender and will let nature decide, which the director finds very unusual.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've skipped some things,
Okay.
right?
Maybe.
Unless I just spaced out. Did we talk about how they visited their friend's house?
Alice and Josh.
Yeah.
Uh, Briefly, if you want to add to it, go for it.
Okay. Well, yeah. When they're meeting Alice and Josh, I just wanted to say that like Alice and Josh are like talking about the pod and how great it is,
Mm-hmm.
but in a really weird way because Alice is just like, yeah, I don't even have to think about it.
Yeah. She goes on this like academic feminist monologue basically of like how actually the the source for all of this conflict between men and women for hundreds of thousands of years is actually womb envy because it's like the one step in biology that men can't have control over. And this is the perfect she's like, this is the ultimate perfect solution.
Yeah.
And then it's Josh next to her struggling with like the pod version of a baby Bjorn thing,
Yeah.
like trying to strap it onto his chest, and then he's like, ta-da, and then he has an egg on his chest. And just like he tries to add to the conversation and she goes like, yeah, yeah, and then she just keeps going.
Yeah.
So it's like there's stuff of like the power dynamics between men and women have shifted, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh so their baby is in the pod. They also watch the sperm go into the egg and
Yeah.
it's like a whole thing. The director is like really into it. She's like cheering it on like she's at a sporting event
Yeah.
basically.
I wanted to, sorry.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention the Josh and Alice thing
Mm-hmm.
because it was that night that Alvy changed his mind.
Yeah.
Because Alvy and Rachel,
Yes.
they got into a fight,
Mm-hmm.
and then Alvy could see how much it meant to her,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like, okay.
Yeah.
So like it wasn't just like a out of nowhere shift.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Rachel gets very invested in caring for the pod via the app on her phone. She can like choose the flavors of the nutrients that the pod is getting and stuff. Alvy doesn't interact with it much, saying that the baby isn't even there with them. Eventually, they're able to hear the heartbeat inside the pod, and they can even see the baby growing inside. But they seem to have kind of an underwhelmed reaction to this, because like earlier in the tour, when Rachel was there alone, then you can like wave your hand over the pod, and then you can see inside it. And she saw like a baby that was almost fully developed, about to be born, and everyone was like, "Wow, amazing, beautiful." And then she's really excited to see their baby, but they're like, "Oh, you can't see it until you can hear the heartbeat because we just need to protect it." So then they finally are able to see inside, and she waves her hand over, and it's just like a teeny tiny little like the earliest possible stages of an embryo development, and they're just looking at it, and then that's kind of
Yep.
it. Um, Around this time, they also tour an education center that Pegasus owns, because education doesn't exist, or the Department of Education doesn't exist anymore.
There's no government-funded education.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Pegasus also has a school.
Conveniently. Yeah. And then part of the Q&A of different people that are also on this tour reveals that pod babies don't dream.
Yeah, and they're like, yeah, we know it's a side effect, but dreams don't actually hold any value.
Yeah. They also they're in art classes, and um she's like, the kids actually don't do any art at all. Like there's none of that mess of like the paintbrushes or anything. They're watching the AI do the art, and then they're critiquing the art
Yeah.
instead. Uh yeah, and then but in the trailer, they have that scene where the guy says like, my nephew was born in the womb center, and he doesn't dream. And then the way that they edit it, it's just a beat, and then the director goes like, I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah.
But then in the movie, the full scene is her being like, that's not just a one-off thing, this is a known side effect. And it just has like completely different implications instead of just being a joke. And then they do not acknowledge it for for a while.
Yeah.
So after certain stages of development, the center says that they can take the pod home for a while. Alvy is thrown off by the giant egg in their house, and then they struggle a bit to bond with the pod. Eventually, Alvy becomes very close and pretty parental. He takes the pod with him to work and he reads to it. He cries at a documentary and he leaves his phone in the fridge, suggesting he's the one going through the typical pregnancy symptoms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He cries at a documentary of penguins.
hmm
Rachel just stares at him almost in disgust.
It's another thing where, like, if this was edited in a trailer, it would be funny, but then they let it go on for too long.
Yeah.
Where instead it's just like, do you like this man?
Yeah. Why are you married?
Yeah. So Rachel struggles with connecting to the pod. She complains to her friends about how easy it is for Alfie, and she continues to have dreams where she's pregnant or giving birth to an egg. They attend another therapy session together where Rachel refers to it as the pod, and Alfie says he sees it as the baby. Uh, Rachel takes the pod to work with her, and Alice says she shouldn't do that because she doesn't want to be labeled as the distracted mom. She shows Rachel a closet where all the other pods are kept, and Rachel reluctantly puts her pod away with the others.
And Rachel asks Alice if Alice's pod is here.
Mm-hmm.
And Alice is like, no, it just became too much of a hassle, so we're leaving it at the pod center.
It became too distracting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and the center says repeatedly that, like, most couples choose to leave it at the center. They don't choose to take it home with them. So the center makes them return the pod at the end of their home visit period, and Alvy and Rachel want an extension to keep bonding. The director says that isn't possible. They don't offer extensions. Alvy decides to steal the pod since it's their baby. The center is pretty upset with Alvy and Rachel, and the director specifies that while it is their baby, the pod belongs to Pegasus and they need to return company property. Rachel has another dream where she's pregnant, and when she wakes up, she tells Alvy to start packing. She wants to have the baby at their home on Shell Island, which is a property they've occasionally mentioned throughout the movie. It's in nature, but they never visit because Rachel doesn't feel like leaving the city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've talked about it previously in the movie.
Mhm.
And one of the times they talked about it, she's like, we should just sell it like my dad said. It's not like anyone lives out there anymore. Everyone's moving into the city,
Mhm.
which is just not what is happening. Like, I know this is a fictional thing,
Yeah.
but
But the near future.
the near future in a world that is definitely satire of our world, people have been exiting the big cities and moving to smaller towns or smaller cities.
This is also like, this is New York.
Yeah.
They say.
This takes place in New York City. People.
It's my favorite character in this movie.
Yeah. People, obviously, yes, are still moving to New York City, but like there has been a mass exodus, especially since the pandemic. And
it's also not clear how they own this house, if like Alvy owned it before they got together or something.
Yeah.
But so they've video called Rachel's parents to tell them that they have the baby at the center, and then in the middle of that, her dad like starts being a stereotypical dad of like, you should really just consider selling that house or think about refinancing because you got a family to think about now. And Alvy is just like, okay, thank you. Bye.
And speaking of their parents,
Yeah.
his parents send them a book that's about attached parenting style.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, this is interesting. And then when they go to the therapist together,
Mm-hmm.
the therapist is like, no, detached parenting is the better one.
Yeah.
Like attached parenting is bad.
Yeah.
And it was just very much like, again, supporting the uh, Pegasus business
Yeah.
because their whole business is detached
Attached.
parenting.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they like, his mom sent him some parenting books, and then he opens that one up, and they see that it was published in 1974 or something, and then they just laugh because of
Yeah.
how old it is. And then he's like, I don't know, there still could be something good in it,
Yeah.
but that's about it, really. Then he just uses it to debate the AI therapist, and
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So they get to the island, they go on walks through the woods and the beach, and they are just generally kind of relaxing with the pod. They realize that the center has shut off the charging capabilities of the pod. This is in an attempt to get them to return. Rachel wants to head back immediately, but Alvy says that they have to trust this process. The pod has a 48 hours worth of charge on its own before it needs to get back on its base thing, so they have some time. They wake up to the pod playing a lullaby, which is the alert that says that the baby is ready. They struggle to get it open, and the app is asking for a birth code. They don't know the code, so Alvy forces the pod open with a screwdriver. They're both very freaked out. It's very hectic, but then they manage to get the baby out safely. He cries. They say he's perfect. Alvy and the baby sleep in the bed, and Rachel packs up the pod into a box. She rides a bike to the post office and drops off the package. She returns home and gets back into bed with her family. And then the credits start
And
rolling.
the credits.
And then there's a mid-credit scene. There's another clip from the Pegasus founder saying that their customers at the womb center aren't the parents, but the babies. He says he dreams of a future where kids will one day pick their own parents. He smiles and tells the next generation to choose wisely.
Yeah. Um, her riding a bike in this world
Mm-hmm.
does not feel believable to me because in this world where she like is from New York City
Yeah.
and nobody cares about being outside, they have like little booths set up with plants and a mask
Yeah.
like to breathe into the plants.
Mm-hmm.
No way she learned how to ride a bike.
Yeah, she basically just has like a treadmill standing desk
Yeah.
that she's at all the time. And she's also like in her work heels while she's walking on it.
Yeah.
It's yeah. Yeah.
Also, so the center wants the pod back at the end of like the visiting
Yeah.
period, and then they say, or the director asks them, "Are you good for a delivery of next Wednesday?"
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Well, isn't that
Isn't that up to the pod?
like there's a due date?" And they're
Yeah.
like, "Well, we don't have a lot of pods, and some of these pods haven't been telling us when they're ready, so now we have a new thing in our contract that after 39 weeks, we just take them out."
Yeah.
And that's what like
That freaks them out. And then they also say like, and here's another thing that you have to sign for it. It's part of our like neurological development seminar. And they're like, you don't want your pod to miss this. They're
yeah.
like, we did not sign up for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the 39-week delivery thing is weird in general, but
Mm-hmm.
towards the beginning when Rachel's learning about the pods and everything,
Mm-hmm.
like a nurse is basically like a light goes off and sings a little lullaby to let you know that the baby is ready.
Yeah.
Uh we think that it's nature knows best.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, they keep saying that at a couple different moments, like people at the center, like the nurse says it, and then when the director is telling them about like the induced labor policy that they have now, then she says like, or Rachel is like, well, what is it? And she says, oh, it's like oxytocin or something. She's like, it's the love chemical.
yeah.
It's all natural. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So things that stuck out about the movie.
A lot.
Yeah. I yeah. Okay, so some positives.
Uh-huh.
It's got some great visuals.
It looks good.
The cinematography is really good.
Yeah, the production design is good.
Mm-hmm.
They used really interesting locations and buildings that don't exist in New York City,
Mm-hmm.
but are supposedly futuristic New York City buildings,
Yeah.
which is just Europe. Um,
Yeah, it is Belgium where they filmed
yeah.
this. Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like it just looked nice.
The performances are pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. It's very visually pleasing. Um, some other stuff. I don't know if I would describe this as a comedy.
No.
That's
Satire, fine.
Satire is fine, and I get that like a streaming service maybe isn't going to get as nuanced in the genres to say like satire versus comedy, or like
Yeah.
there's just so many types of comedy that I feel like if you watch the trailer and you see that genre listed on there like we did, you have a very different expectation for the movie than what it actually is. And
Yeah.
I don't know, that might have been part of the reason why I was unsatisfied with this movie.
Thought it was gonna be funnier.
Yeah.
I thought it would be fun, and
Yeah.
it wasn't.
Yeah. Um there's some confusing world building where it's not fully developed to me. So Pegasus owns everything, like the pods and the education centers and stuff. They never, there's not really throwaway lines that, like, I don't need a whole bunch of exposition where it's like, all right, you're watching this in 2023 ish. Then, like, here's what's going to happen in the next 50 to 100 years in order for the governments to collapse and
Yeah.
corporations to take over. I can see that roadmap. That's fine. But like the how does is this normal? This is New York? Is the rest of the world like this? Like any of that stuff?
Yeah.
Um, they they have feminist protests outside of the womb center at one
Really
point.
weird.
Yeah, and they're chanting "N- "No to pods,
Stay out of our like
stay out of our wombs,
no
no
pods.
pods." Yeah,
And it was really weird.
and it's when they're stealing their pod. So they walk out at first. They see the protest. And Alvy says, like, I thought the feminists liked the pods. And then Rachel just says, well, these ones clearly don't. And then that's it. There's no other suggestion of like why that switch happened. Is it because it's owned by the corporations? Maybe.
But at that point, that's not a feminist thing.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of this movie came across as like a weird trying to be political, but like it wasn't understanding what it was satirizing.
Yeah. Yeah, that was I think I deleted it, but I think one of the first notes that I wrote on this was like, what is the thesis of this movie? I was just like, I don't know what it's arguing for
Yeah.
in any of this. Yeah. And then so the womb center versus natural birth options. That was the thing that you pointed out after we watched it of just like cuz there are moments Rachel keeps daydreaming or dreaming about being pregnant and then waking up realizing she's not. She never says it out loud, but the implication is that she regrets doing the pod and that she wishes she got pregnant instead. And then there's a part where she's at a gym and a woman swims by her and she's pregnant, and then they are in the locker room together and her baby starts kicking and she like has Rachel touch her stomach and stuff, and Rachel says like they're expecting at the womb center and she's like, "Oh, you're so lucky. We would have done that if we could afford it." And then she's got a friend that is also pregnant or is just around
Yeah.
in like a brief scene, and they kind of talk about dreams and that's about it. But like when we watched it, you were like, "Well, how do poor people feel about any of this?"
Yeah, it was just a weird like we're following rich people
Yeah.
and we're supposed to feel bad for them for having this weird option that they don't have to do, but they're
Yeah.
doing it, and like
There's no acknowledgement of uh these are not the typical. This is not the typical case in this new
Yeah.
world system where Rachel has these like options. They've got plenty of money. Everyone else that she interacts with has huge houses in New York City. They're wealthy enough to be able to just spend the $8,000 on a deposit, even though Pegasus is helping to pay for most of the deposit. They can just drop that money, and also they own that house on the island and stuff.
Yeah, they own the house on the island. They own a really nice apartment.
Yeah.
Their friends have a yard in New York City,
Yeah.
specifically futuristic New York City, where everyone is moving into the city.
Yeah.
So it's more densely populated.
Yeah.
And and it was just a weird.
Yeah.
This is the rich people, and
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't acknowledgement of that.
Yeah.
It was just like, no, this is the normal
Mhm.
life. Everyone's happy.
Yeah. In the botany stuff, or just like plants and the incorporating nature is like a huge aspect of this movie.
Yeah.
But then, like, when Rachel's talking to her boss about the promotion, then her boss says like, "Oh, I see your husband's like his occupation isn't listed. What does he do?" And she like kind of hesitates, or she's kind of embarrassed to say it. And she's like, "Oh, well, he teaches botany.
He's a professor.
He's a botanist." And she's like, "But he also teaches like the structure of holographic plants or something." Like that's
Yeah.
yeah.
And the boss is just like,
Oh, she goes, "So you're the primary breadwinner." And it's so weird. And then there's oxygen bars
Yeah.
that are around the city where there are plants, and then they put on oxygen masks, and and then they breathe in the oxygen and stuff. And then there's nature pods.
There's nature pods, and there's also just plant life everywhere.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and it's so weird that like if Alfie is supposed to be as like if he's supposed to be the odd one out, then there shouldn't be any plants around. It should be like greenery in their apartment, at his work, and at the island, and that's it.
Yep.
But it's everywhere. Like there's just flower boxes everywhere, and the nature pod thing, like that's artificial, but she still walks up like a giant tree house to go into it, and it like
it's probably because they filmed in Belgium. They couldn't just.
They can't just uproot everything. But yeah, that was just a really weird thing.
There was a scene after they go through the initial pod process of putting the sperm in the egg.
Mm-hmm.
They go home, they're in bed, and Alvy tries to initiate a little fun time.
Yeah.
A little
something.
Little kissy kissy.
Yeah.
And then Rachel rolls over, and he's just like, "What?"
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "I just got pregnant. Give me a couple weeks."
Yeah.
But it was really out of place.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're trying to say.
Or if they were just trying to be like, these are the pregnancy stereotypes that we identify with.
Yeah.
And this is how they're still going to exist.
And like these two don't have an emotional relationship, they're not compatible. They are physically compatible, and this movie shows that.
They're very affectionate. So like the opening scene where Rachel goes throughout her day, and then she wakes Alvy up by like having coffee like under his nose, and that like he smells it, and then he wakes up, and then they like kiss and stuff. So they're very close all the time. Like most of the time they're framed together. Even if they're like, even when they're on opposite sides of this debate, they're still like, I love you. This is something that we have to figure out together.
Yeah.
But then have they ever spoken about his job before?
Yeah, 'cause, like he's explaining on the island plants.
He's talking to her about
and trees,
lichen and stuff.
And then she's asking questions and like learning about it, and just like you didn't
ever Yeah.
express interest.
I feel like that's the thing. Like if you are with someone who is in a different profession than you, don't when you say stuff about like how's your day or whatever, don't you learn a little bit about like the surface level information of the stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they've supposed to be they're together for several years.
Well,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Another thing with their relationship is Alvy never asks if Rachel wants to carry the baby. Like it's just an implied thing that they have talked about before of he would prefer a natural birth, but
Yeah.
they never explain like how does she feel? Why does she want the pod? Uh like it and this there's some interviews that I saw where this is kind of intentional from the director where she's uh like that should be part of the thing that you're thinking about while you're watching this movie is what are Rachel's motivations.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if there are two people that are supposed to be on opposite sides of this debate, then I feel like their reasoning should both be explained.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's also not explained why Alvy gets to be British and Rachel is American.
That's true.
Takes place in New York City.
Yeah.
Emilia Clarke is British.
Could have been London.
It could have easily been a London.
Yeah.
I would have easily believed London is also the same.
Yeah.
Like, that is a place that I would more likely believe people are moving into the city.
Mm.
But
yeah,
that's just because the island is small compared to
limited,
America.
Yeah.
So the city is just expanding. Like,
yeah.
And Chiwetel can do an American accent.
Mm-hmm.
He did one in Venom 3.
Yeah.
They made all of the British people in that do American accents.
Yeah.
And all of the main cast in Venom 3 were British actors.
They should have gone the Venom 3 route.
Yep.
So think about that pod generation.
But outside of the accent,
yeah,
I agree that the performances were good.
Mm-hmm. So the ending just stops the story. It felt like a weird beat to like have the continuation through her returning the pod. And then I understand if it's like it's up in the air, like what will they do next is where it's supposed to make you feel, but instead it was just like, no, they just had a baby. Like now you deal with the real life situation of like how do you want to raise the baby? What kind of education is it going to have? Like how are you going to financially support this new lifestyle? Is she going to quit her job?
Something else that is just fully never explained is they have all of this AI. They have the pod for the,
the
baby pregnancy time, but then not once do they explain like what do people do when the baby is born?
Yeah,
because like Alice is just like, we don't want to deal with the pod.
Yeah,
what are you gonna do when the baby is alive?
Yeah,
do you just say
yeah, I guess.
Is there something to take care of the baby? Do people have baby daycares?
I assume they would have to if it's like if they're doing the detached parenting style, then that's like it made me think of like Victorian times where that was the norm of just like, well, let's just have the servant raise the baby and then the children are brought out on special occasions. And like what do they do? What do Alice and Josh do?
In a movie like this, there should be some explanation.
There should be options presented.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they also showed that like the funding for Alvy's job was cut because they are considering just replacing all of the plants in the greenhouse at the university with holograms because like the upkeep is too much.
Yep.
And yeah, Alvy was very upset about that. And then that's the last scene that you see of him at work. So it's just kind of like where does he stand? Where does she stand? Like now they have a baby who can't dream. so what do they do? Yeah.
Well, we forgot about they introduced dream patches
Oh, that's
or
right.
whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that the babies can dream. It's just like a little patch that you put on the pod
Yeah.
and then it gives them a dream.
Yeah, and then the director was like, it's pretty simple content right now, but it will get updated as we come out with new dreams.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I wish that the baby dreaming thing was a one-off joke because that was one of the things that made me just be like, well, what do you like?
Yeah.
What do they do? How do they raise this like this AI baby now? I just
Yeah.
Are they gonna have a boring person?
Probably.
Yeah, I just
Boring people to work in the building.
yeah,
That's all Pegasus wants.
that's true. The last thing before we get to production facts. What the part of the unsatisfying feeling that I had with the ending was that mid-credit scene. That added absolutely nothing.
Yeah, no, there's nothing that it was more like they filmed another TV spot and they
Yeah.
didn't know where to put it in the movie and then they're like, let's just slap it in the credits.
If this is supposed to be a satire, a comedy, whatever, there should be some sort of final comedic beat. Instead, he's just like, someday kids will choose their parents. And then you just feel like, what does that even mean?
To me, it felt like a real cocky belief that this movie could get a sequel or another movie just set in this universe.
From what I've seen of this director, that doesn't feel like her vibe.
It just
But
like the way that he was like choose wisely made me be
yeah,
like, "Oh, are they trying to pitch a movie?"
the second pod generation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I would watch that if that
No.
came out.
No.
Yeah. Anything else before production facts?
Let's just go on to production facts.
All right. So this was released January 19th, 2023 at the Sundance Film Festival. It's an hour and 50-minute runtime and it's rated PG-13. So remember all those positive reviews quotes?
Yeah.
It's got a 42% tomato meter with a 55% popcorn meter.
Nice.
It's got a 60 from Metacritic, which is like mixed or average reviews,
Yeah.
and then a 5.6 out of 10 on IMDb. So like
Sure.
pretty much across the board, it got a meh.
Yeah.
The Rotten Tomato critic consensus is, with its roundabout script undermining solid performances from Amelia Clarke and how do you say
Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Chiwetel Ejiofor, the pod generation stimulates the mind but not much else. And then I was reading through various reviews, like quotes that they had on Rotten Tomatoes, and they all say it's basically an overly simplistic thesis. It's very binary of like empowering women versus emasculating men. And audience reviews said that they were waiting for it to end after about an hour, but the production design was solid.
Yep.
So I think we are aligned with that. The budget for this movie, could not find a number. I'm assuming around the $10 million range. I think it's gonna have to be in the double digits of millions just because of the names that they have and the production design and how much like CG stuff they needed to do with the eye and other
I would have
various
assumed 15 to
elements.
20 because of the names.
Yeah, I was also thinking though that like they filmed in uh Belgium
Yeah.
and that is like that's a cheaper place, so maybe they could have brought it down a little bit. I don't know. Uh at least 10 million though.
Yeah.
In terms of box office, it earned $52,262. 31,569 of that is domestic in the US, and then $20,693 is international. I did not find specific streaming information about it. I think it was just kind of released into the ether.
Yeah.
Yeah. The production timeline. So October 2021, Amelia Clarke and Chiwetel Ejiofor are announced to star in a movie directed by Sophie Barthus, I think. She's French. I don't know if there's another way to pronounce that.
I mean, it's probably Barta.
Barthe. Uh, And then March 2022, filming takes place in Belgium. And then May and November 2022, the rest of the cast is announced. It's a pretty small cast. So then, like, one of the people that they listed was like, this woman is announced. And then I looked her up, and it's the woman who plays the post office worker at the very end of the movie. So it's like, all right, yeah, once you got the two out there, then you just kind of like, and all these extras. January 2023, the film premieres at Sundance, and then March 2023, Roadside Attractions and Vertical Entertainment acquire the North American rights, and then August 11th, 2023, that's when the limited theatrical release happens. We've talked about Vertical Entertainment before because they are the distribution company that did the terrible Sprouse brother movie and a couple other things from that Voltage Entertainment. So they are a distribution company. I believe Roadside Attractions also is just a distribution company. The credits for this movie, when we were watching it, there were about 15 production slates that showed up before the movie actually started. So
I don't know if I've seen more than that.
It's been a while.
It's a lot.
Yeah, which, like, that's not a criticism of this movie. You just gotta do that for indie stuff. Yeah. So it's got a couple awards and nominations. It was a 2023 Bronze Horse nominee at the Stockholm Film Festival. It's a 2023 winner of the Maria Mitchell Visionary Award at the Nantucket Film Festival. That was for Sophie Berthis. And then 2023 winner of the Alfred P. Sloan Feature Film Prize at Sundance. And that's given to a film featuring a STEM theme or a scientist. And as of 2024, then the prize for that award is $25,000. So she got something out of it.
Yeah, I would love to see the competition.
That was the only one.
So they still
award it.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, this movie does have a tagline.
Oh.
Discover the new natural.
Oh. Okay.
That's fine.
I guess. Whatever.
Yeah, it could be better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was written and directed by Sophie Barthès. She's a French-American filmmaker. She got her start with her 2007 short film Happiness, which is about a woman who buys a box of happiness and can't decide if she should open it. So she's got kind of a running theme through her career. This showed at Sundance, which then got her a spot into the Sundance Institute Screenwriters Lab. So she's all over that festival. Yeah. I think she also has ties to the Nantucket Festival too. So once you're in, you're in. And then this is her third feature. Her previous include 2009's Cold Souls and a 2014 Madame Bovary adaptation. Both of them have Paul Giamatti in it, and both also have her listed as written by credits. The Cold Souls. Oh wait, yeah, I have that later. Okay, so she said in a Sundance interview that she found out she was pregnant while she was making her first film, and Pod Generation is heavily inspired by the dreams she had during this time. One of the dreams specifically, I don't think we mentioned earlier, but there's a part where Rachel is in a grocery store and it's just babies and baby carriers all on the shelves, and she selects one to buy. That was a dream that Sophie actually had, but she was worried about raising a consumer, and that's why she had the dream.
Yeah. You're gonna.
Yeah. So Cold Souls is also inspired by a dream that she had about Woody Allen getting his soul extracted. The plot of Cold Souls is Paul Giamatti plays a fictionalized version of himself, and he is struggling to get through this play, and then he reads an ad that's like, just get your soul extracted and you'll feel better. And he does. And then he feels worse, and then he has to go on a journey to get his soul back.
Okay.
Yeah. I watched the trailer for that. I would maybe watch it, but a wild thing. Yep. She also then, like, in one of the Sundance interviews that I watched or something else, she also then mentioned Woody Allen as like another inspiration for the insemination thing. I was just like, you gotta let that one go.
Maybe
Maybe not a name to drop.
don't hold on to him.
Yeah. Yeah. She has said that she enjoys science fiction as a genre to work through philosophical ideas in a playful way. That's fair. There's a lot of fun examples of that.
Yep.
And then this movie was partially inspired by the growth and reliance of AI. She described it as a tool becoming more powerful than the creator of the tool, and the creator then becoming a slave to that tool. And then also an issue in our society of the commodification of everything. So those ideas kind of coming together for this movie. She says she doesn't want to question if technology is good or bad, but instead our changing relationship to technology. And then to Sundance, she said it's very possible to have children in the near future outside of the human body, but people haven't questioned yet what that means for womanhood, if it's empowering or if it's giving something integral to womanhood up.
Oh, yeah, no.
I don't think that's the conversation we should be having.
No. I'm not a woman. And that's the clip. Watch the Pod Generation.
For any context. Yeah. There's
It's a weird thing.
So many immediate icky territories.
Yeah.
Also, after we watched this, it was like, this film does not deal with any nuance. Which she kind of said she was like a little bit intentional of like, she wanted to explore this couple that had all of the options presented for them, then why would they go with this one? Excellent question. Tell us something about Rachel's stance on pods if you're going to take it in that way. But they also there are some lesbian couples that are like in the background of shots. There are no gay men that we could remember seeing in the movie. Like, that feels like a pretty obvious they would like to have this option. There's nothing about like trans couples or like, someone wanting to carry the pregnancy or like be that more involved, like,
yeah,
I will wear the pod on my body person. No mention of any of that. And then to say this, like, what does this mean for womanhood? I don't care. I just don't care.
Yeah, I mean, womanhood is whatever it means to the individual.
Yeah.
But I also didn't, and again, I'm not a woman.
Another clip.
But to me, this wasn't a movie about womanhood.
No.
Like, Emilia Clarke is barely the main character.
Yes.
Like,
as the pregnancy continues, then it focuses more and more on Alvy because his position is shifting. And I get that. Like, he was the one who's the most reluctant, and then he's the one who becomes the most invested and like sees it as a baby instead of a pod. Yeah. I get that you want to explore that. What the hell is happening to Rachel? She's like, we just see these dreams. So it's like, clearly something's going on in her subconscious, but let her say it.
We get dreams and then she's upset.
Vaguely.
Like, she's vaguely upset through most of this movie.
Yeah.
And then she stares at Alvy.
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And that...
the closest that we get is them in the therapy session and her saying, maybe I'm not ready for motherhood. And then Alvy is like, no, you become a mother. You just need a bond with the pod.
Yeah, that was like the closest moment. I was like, oh, something's going to happen now. We're going to see what happens when someone changes their mind.
Yeah. No.
With the pod.
Yeah.
Which I think is a much more interesting concept.
We see Alvy change his mind, but he is changing his mind to conform with the rest of society.
Yeah, and then she starts pushing back and then immediately is like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah.
So...
yeah, there's no other progression of just like, you see her like take the pod to her work with her one day.
Yeah.
And then the next scene is her showing up to a meeting that they have at the center where they have to return the pod and it's the end of their home visit.
Yeah.
So it's like, did you bond in 24 hours? Are you on board with this again now? Like,
this is the type of art that I dislike when it feels like the artist is trying to say something just to say something. Like,
Yeah.
I think I've been pretty upfront that with like the stuff that I make, I'm just like, I want to make something that I enjoy, something that's fun,
Yeah.
not really saying much,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, not every director has to have like this beautiful artistic vision that's like saying something poetic and political and just,
Yeah.
and and you get directors who put this kind of stuff out where it's very clear that they're trying so hard
Yeah.
to say something, and then they, in interviews like this, say something that does not fit what they actually made. And
I think like you can take multiple approaches to filmmaking.
yes,
Hot take. But like, yeah, you can do the stuff that we typically do where it's like this is gonna be a pretty chill scene. Like
yeah,
you can say the same critique of our stuff as you do with
sure,
this of like nothing happens. It's
yeah,
like, yeah, because this is supposed to be like a vignette or whatever, or like
yeah,
but we are aware of the low stakes nature of it. And then this is like she clearly has a very specific direction. Even with all those production slates in front of it, it was like I never felt like there were too many cooks in the kitchen. Like whatever, like this was so intentional, the final product. But the issue is like she also said in an interview that like she didn't want to like the not questioning if technology is good or bad. And then she didn't want to critique or make anyone feel like it was a lecture. She just wanted to ask the question, like the what if question. And that is so vague for this situation that you're setting up that instead I feel very unsatisfied.
it's
After I look at the pretty images for about an hour, then I'm like, okay, well now nothing is happening.
that's kind of a lame thing to do. Of like, I want to ask a question for almost 2 hours. It's it's
It's a
so
finger.
it's so different when you get a Star Trek episode that doesn't fully answer the question, but at the end the captain is like, I don't know. It's not up to us to decide.
Yeah.
And then you get created by Gene Roddenberry
Yeah.
because it's 45 minutes and it's like, oh, that is kind of an interesting think piece.
Yeah.
Like Star Trek. And it's not 2 hours worth of a feature film.
There should have been a short.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Anyway, her husband is the DP on the film and they often work together.
That's nice.
Yeah. So he does a lot. I forget, there was something that I was like, oh, he's got some wild credits. I'm not gonna be able to find it again. Good for them. It's a family project. So the production design is by Clement Price Thomas. Part of the inspiration for this was the general look of the Apple Store, which feels right.
Yeah.
The goal was to make the technology look seductive or is like something aesthetically pleasing and something you would want in your home. I feel like learning that, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. A lot of times when we watch sci-fi movies of like in the near future, then it's stuff where it's like this piece of technology is like convenient, but no one questions it, but also then it's secretly bad. And it's like, well, then why would you want it? It looks gross. Why would you want that in your house? And it's like, no, the pods are like, everything's very smooth. Like everything, the center is very bright. There's a lot of pastels and stuff. Like it's all very pleasing to look at. And like, you get it, why it's taken hold. And then they were also inspired by mixing technology and biological elements, making tech look like something that came from nature. This is a prediction of a trend that the director Sophie Barthas has of like, as technology advances, she believes it will like people will make it to look more natural in order for it to look more appealing to our subconscious of like,
Interesting.
This is a thing that I can incorporate, which I can see.
Uh-huh.
I will agree with her on that.
I mean, there's already like radio and power towers that are designed to look like palm trees.
Yeah.
Like in Los Angeles and stuff.
Yeah.
No, production design, obviously great.
Yeah.
I have one problem with production design is that there were just iPads.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Like, it really bothered me. Everything looked really good. It looked clean, looked smooth.
Yeah.
and then there was just an iPad with one of those like fold out cases where it turns into a stand.
Yeah.
And I was just like, but no, that doesn't work for me anymore.
That feels like one of those there are things like now that we've worked on commercials and a couple features and stuff where it's just like there are tricks that the art department does where it's just like that gets the job done.
Yeah.
Like if you're looking at it on a flat image, you're not going to process how cheap it actually is, and that's just like necessity of their work. And then there's stuff like the iPad on the thing where it's like I get why you did that, but
Because it wasn't even like, because if they had made like a nice like wooden sleek stand or something where like it did look more like nature or whatever,
yeah,
I'm like, okay, that's fine.
yeah,
But this was just like a purple felt iPad case.
just like clearly came from Amazon.com.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So this film got the 2023 Dolby Institute Fellowship, which is a grant that allowed them to finish the film with Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos sound design technology before their theatrical release. So there's a couple like exclusive interviews that I watched where it was her talking about the sound design process and like how it helped things like the technology feel natural of like the blinks of the eye as it's talking to them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. I thought it was interesting that they got it because it was such a limited theatrical release.
Yeah.
But I mean, they've got the Sundance credits, so that helps a lot. And then just a fun little fact that ChatGPT came out the same week this movie played at Sundance.
That is interesting, actually, because when watching this, there were a lot of moments where I was like, oh, this is weirdly dated. Like, it is already behind the times.
It was weirdly dated because she had started thinking about this idea basically since she got pregnant.
Yeah.
And then 13 years later, like, I think she said around 6 years before this movie came out is when she was, like, officially trying to work on it.
Yeah.
And then by the time that it came out, then she was like, there are already things that are mirroring what's in my movie. So in some way it's like I was right, but then yeah, it felt dated in the way that like the Alexas and Siris of the world already exist. And
yeah, it doesn't come across as things in the real world are mirroring your movie.
Yeah.
When the movie's not out yet.
True. That's all I got. We should talk about our rating.
Rating. We rate movies out of 4 with 5 options. 0 out of 4 is, oh no. 1 out of 4 is, it was the movie. 2 out of 4 is well made or enjoyable. 3 out of 4, enjoyable and technically good. 4, Oscar worthy.
Mm-hmm.
I gave it a 2, and that's a low 2.
I also gave it a 2.
Because it's well made.
Yeah.
And like, that is it.
I gave it a 2. I kind of might drop it to a 1.
Drop it to a 1. We get an average of 1.5.
That feels good.
Right.
Yeah, because as goofy as it is, and as wild to compare them as it is, I think You Are So Not Invited to My Bat Mitzvah is a stronger movie.
Oh, that is a better movie. It's easily a better movie.
Which we also just gave as an average 2 score.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Other movies that we've watched recently, we watched The Electric State,
Mm-hmm.
Chris Pratt, Millie Bobby
Brown.
Millie Bobby. That's not our thing. We can't say that on our channel.
Oh, okay.
Millie Bobby Brown.
Great. Yep.
A lot of people do not like that movie.
It was fine.
It was fine.
Yeah.
I think people are upset because the budget was insane.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And Netflix is just churning out content that doesn't really have much heart or meaning to it. I get being upset about that.
Mm-hmm.
But this movie, at no point did I think was going to be a movie that meant something. Like, the Russo brothers are not directors who are asking a question for 2.5 hours.
They're asking what if.
The Russo brothers are saying, let's make a fun robot movie.
Yeah.
Full of action and comedy. And that's what they gave.
I felt the way that you felt after We Have a Ghost, of if this came out in the 90s, the movie takes place in the 90s, but if this came out in like 90s, early 2000s, whatever, it would be a nostalgic classic now, where like it's not the strongest, but like sometimes you go back to movies from that time period and it's also not the strongest, but it's just like it's got a good vibe. And that has made it last for decades.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how I felt watching it.
I think We Have a Ghost has more heart,
Definitely.
but I get, yeah.
It is heart and Tignataro.
Yeah.
That goes a long way.
It does. Well, remember to follow us on places.
Mm-hmm.
Leave comments, questions, and we'll respond on our VHS podcast. We don't know what our next episode is, but it'll happen.
It will.
It will happen.
It will.
And we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.